What's going on, sisters? Let me ask y'all something real quick. Just real quick. Let me get like 10 seconds. 10 seconds real quick, right? So, do y'all believe in God? You do? Okay, you believe in the Bible, right? You said no? Okay, why not? It was written by a white man? Can you prove it was written by a white man?
It says that a king took the Bible, remade Jesus as the son's image.
Where does it say that?
You can check anywhere.
Anywhere? So you should be able to show me anywhere then, right? Okay, so show it.
You can look it up.
What do you mean look it up? So can you, I'm saying though, sister, you said that I can go anywhere and find that a king, which king made the Bible and made Jesus? Which king?
He didn't make Jesus.
Well, that's what you said, isn't it?
He wrote him.
He wrote him. Which king did that? Which king did that? Jesus was a black man. You're right about that. So are you saying that the Christianity as we understand it today is authored by the white man, or are you saying the Bible itself is authored by the white man?
It has been interpreted and repeated
Mm-hmm.
and spoken into our heads incorrectly.
I understand that. And to an extent, that's true. What white people have done is taken this book, which was written by our ancestors, twisted it, and like the slave Bible, omitted or took out certain things that would not coincide with their understanding and left in certain things to try to keep us enslaved. But the same way you don't blame the Bible for that is, do you blame a pencil for misspelling words? No. Do you blame a axe for killing people when an axe isn't used to kill people? What's an axe used for? To cut down trees. So the same way you can take an axe and misuse it is the same way you can take the Bible and misuse it. So let me show you something real quick, sister. Give me Exodus 21:16. Because you understood and you are right that Christ is a black man according to the Bible. But they will never teach us that. Because if Christ is a black man, and Christ said, if he that has seen me have seen God, that means God looks like a black man. That means all the people of the Bible look like him. And that's not information they want us to know. So what we're trying to do is reverse the brainwashing that's happened to our people. We've been fed lies for 500 years. Now it's time to start feeding our people truth. So let me show you something real quick, sister. Exodus 21:16.
This is the book of Exodus chapter 21, verse 16.
Uh-huh.
And he that stealeth a man and selleth him.
Isn't that what they did to us during slavery? It says, those who steal people and sell them. Did they not steal us from the shores of West Africa and then sell us to the highest bidder on the auction block? And the Bible says, if anybody does that,
Or if he be found in his hand.
or we're found, if the slave is found in the slave master's hand, what should happen to the slave master?
He shall surely be put to death.
The Bible says that what happened to so-called black and Hispanic people during slavery is punishable by death. So the lies that a white form of Christianity has been fed to us for 500 years is not a reflection on the Bible. It's a reflection on the wicked people who perpetrated those acts. You see what I'm saying, sister? So now understanding that Christ is a black man, we have to understand his message. Because if they lied about what he looked like, do you think they tell the truth about what he taught? Absolutely not. So now we got to go into what did Christ teach? What did Christ teach? Give me the book of Luke chapter 4, verse 17. I know y'all probably got something to do, but I just want to read you a couple verses in the Bible to try to plant a seed so y'all can start doing some research of your own, right? So give me Luke chapter 4, verse 17.
This is the book of Luke chapter 4, verse 17.
Uh-huh.
And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah.
So Christ goes to the synagogue and somebody hands him the book of Isaiah. I'm sure y'all heard about the book of Isaiah. It's a book in the Bible. So Christ is given the book of Isaiah, and let's see what he says.
And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor.
It says Christ's mission was to preach the good news or the gospel to the poor. Who are the poorest people on the earth right now? That's our people. Black and Hispanic people are the poorest people on the earth. Christ said his mission, the reason why he came, was to give the poor of our people, to give black and Hispanic people the good news. Go ahead.
He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted.
Who's more brokenhearted than our people? Nobody. Nobody's more brokenhearted than so-called black and Hispanic people. Because when we get shot in the streets, there is no justice. When George Floyd gets his life taken away from him, slowly, with a knee on his neck, there is no justice that gets taken into action. But what just happened this past week to the Asian people, we've seen what's going on. Now they're stopping everything. They got to try to shut down the whole city with protests. Things like that don't happen for us. But this is what Christ's message was, to teach our people that there's second chance, that there's salvation, that we can be saved. Even though we're called niggas and spicks and thugs and criminals, that we're God's chosen people, that we're the best people on the planet Earth. That's what Christ's message was. Christ's message was that black and Hispanic men, women, and children are the greatest and most beautiful people on the earth.
That's right.
We're first place. We're second place, we're third place, we're fourth place. We make all, on a track field, they got the 8 lanes. So-called black and Hispanic people, we occupy all 8 of those lanes.
That's right.
That's why we ain't seen, when's the last time we seen a white person win the 100-meter dash? I don't even remember the last time seen a white person compete in the 100-meter dash, because he didn't win in the Olympic trials to get to the Olympics. Why? Because the Bible says that God's chosen people, we're the salt of the earth. We're the ones that give the earth flavor. Everyone wants to look to us for fashion. Everyone wants to talk like us. Everyone wants to act like us and listen to our music. So now we got to get ourselves right, because if we're on the bottom doing all these great things, imagine how much better we can be if we're on top. That's what the message is. So keep going.
To preach deliverance to the captives.
To preach deliverance to the captives. Y'all know what a captive is? It's a slave. It says to preach deliverance to the captives. Christ's message was to free the slaves. Y'all know who Nat Turner is? Nat Turner was a man he started a slave rebellion. Well, Nat Turner, he's a great man, but guess what? The greatest slave rebellion is going to be started by who the world calls Jesus Christ.
That's right.
He's the ultimate rebellious slave. So we're looking after him and his example, and we're rebellious slaves. We're not going to be conformed to this place. We're not going to let this place say that because we have dark skin and a certain textured hair that we're ugly. We have the best textured hair in the world. We have the best skin in the world. We're the best people in the world, and we need to start acting like it by following God and his examples, by following the laws, statutes, and commandments that are written in this Bible. Y'all got the literature, right? The flyers? Yeah, make sure y'all get the flyers, and make sure y'all don't forget what's written on there. Again, the message is simple. Black and Hispanic men, women, and children are the Israelites according to the Bible. We got to believe in the black Messiah, the real Messiah according to the Bible, and keep God's commandments. All right, make sure y'all don't lose that flyer. That's good information right there. All praises to the Most High. What's going on?
So when they came in and took our people during slavery, they didn't take everybody, right?
They didn't take everybody. They left some.
How do we determine,
Uh-huh.
based on the people that are there right now, how
Yes.
do we determine the people that are African
Mhm.
and the people that are African Americans? Is there like a DNA test?
Okay, I mean, you can do
Is there like a
Okay.
DNA test to determine that?
What do you mean? So the scriptures don't deal with a DNA test, right? DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, that's not how you identify how somebody's an Israelite. So give me the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 real quick. Give me Deuteronomy 28 and 15, then start at verse 46. Okay, start at verse 15, then jump to verse 46.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 15.
Uh-huh.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So Moses is telling the Israelites, if you don't obey God, all these bad things, all these curses are going to happen to you. Now here's what's important about these curses. Here's what we have to understand. Give me verse 46 and read that.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 46.
Uh-huh.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign.
It says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign. What shall be upon thee for a sign? The curses shall be upon the Israelites for a sign. When you look at the word sign in the Hebrew, it goes back to the word, it talks about a distinguishing mark or remembrance. So this is how the children of Israel can remember themselves. This is how you can identify who the children of Israel are biblically.
But my question is, the ones that are left in Africa,
I understand. They have to fit the curses of Deuteronomy 28 as well, because these curses are upon, read it again.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 46.
Uh-huh.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder upon thy seed forever.
Upon thy seed forever. So regardless of where they are, whether that be West Africa, whether that be the North or South Pole, whoever the Israelites are, they'll be facing the curses that are listed in this chapter right here. So that's how. You can also go into things like, there's a book called Hebrewisms of West Africa. So you can look at some of the cultural practices of those people, but ultimately that it has to coincide with the description that the Bible gives about what the Israelites will be going through.
So you're saying basically there's no scientific way to
See,
find
that's
out.
what you're trying to do is separate. I just said Hebrewisms of West Africa, and I talked about cultural practices. So using history as a tool and compiling it with the Bible as well, that's a form of a science.
How is a DNA test going to determine whether or not somebody's an Israelite?
I mean, a DNA test, if you take two tissues, if you take a tissue from a white man, and you take a tissue from, like, let's say, an Igbo man in Nigeria, a DNA test can tell you this tissue comes from a white man, and this tissue comes from an Igbo tribe in West Africa. So how do you determine the DNA of someone like a Judah, someone from Benjamin, someone from Levi, Simon? How do you determine the difference
You,
in
you,
your
you,
DNA?
you can't tell with the DNA test because DNA does not get specific on nation and tribe. That's not what DNA identifies, right? For example, I'm gonna show you a hole in DNA, right? The Hausa people, you familiar with?
Okay, yeah.
The Hausa people are predominantly of the R haplogroup. You know where the R haplogroup originates?
No, please no.
Eurasia. Why are West Africans Eurasian in DNA?
Well, I mean, because everybody came from black people.
No. But it's not saying that they came from Africa. It's saying they come from Eurasia and came to their DNA says they came to Africa from Eurasia.
It's possible black people have been all over the world.
So are you telling me that Hausa people are Eurasian? You believe that?
No, they're not.
They're not, right? But DNA says it is.
They're not, but it's possible that they've had ancestry there before. Considering black people have been all over the world.
I agree with you, but their DNA, if you study their DNA, it says that their origination is Eurasia, not Africa. Not like they went from Africa to Eurasia.
And people that want to learn more about this, what can they check?
Hold on, say that one more time.
People that want to learn more about the statement you just made, where can they check?
All they have to do is look up the R haplogroup and look what people, or look at a DNA map of Africa, because that's how I figured that out. Looking at a DNA map of Africa where it will say like the predominant haplogroups of each region. You see what I'm saying? Because you think E is the most predominant haplogroup of West Africa, right? But you also have a considerable amount of people who are R. Where the hell they get the R from?
Yeah, but the answer you've given me, I mean,
Well, what I'm showing you is it's problematic, right? There is not a DNA test that can be done to determine whether or not somebody is an Israelite. You know why? Because there is not an original Israelite sample of DNA to test against, right? So we have to use the Bible and prophecy and history as our measuring stick for that. DNA ain't gonna do it.
are you an Israelite?
Of course.
So can they take your sample and use it to test against other people?
I mean, they could use my sample to test against other people, but that doesn't mean that they're going to determine that I'm an Israelite with that sample.
No. You're an Israelite.
Of course.
Everybody that's an Israelite, their DNA sample should match yours.
Well, what do you mean their DNA sample should match mine?
Their DNA sample should be able to show, like,
See,
it should be able to show
see, but
something
here's the problem, though. Do you know how haplogroups work? Haplogroups don't work on tribes.
Okay.
Haplogroups work on larger people groups than tribes.
Okay.
That's how a haplogroup works. Do you know when like the haplogroup break off happens?
Explain it to me.
It takes tens of thousands of years for a haplogroup to break off, according to their science. At least 14,000 years. I don't believe the Earth is older than 14,000 years. So I don't believe in that science. I think it's a flawed science. That's why I point out that Hausa are genetically said to originate in Eurasia.
You said you don't believe the Earth is older than 14,000 years?
I don't know. How does one go about substantiating it?
I mean, I think they found a lot of fossils that they've carbon dated. They are like
Carbon dating?
millions and millions of years.
Carbon dating is probably the most flawed source of dating in the world.
Please explain.
Okay, so you know what carbon dating is based off of? The assumption of how much carbon was in the world from the beginning of it. Right? How could somebody determine the rate of carbon that's in the earth when the earth started if you weren't at the beginning of the earth?
I mean, I'm sure there are systems that they can use to do it.
No, it's not an exact science though. And this is why when you send the same sample to different labs, they give drastically different results. Right? Like, for example, the University of Arizona, they sent a sample was sent to them of a seal that had just been dead 2 weeks. They dated it, said it was 8,000 years old.
Okay, does it? Oh, they say it was 8,000?
They said it was 8,000 years old and it had been dead for 2 weeks. See what I'm saying? So it's problematic. There are, I'm not just other forms of dating though.
It's problematic, but does that mean that it's completely wrong? Or
It
there are
can't,
issues
it
to
can't, I mean, I can't trust it. When you tell me that something that's dead 2 weeks is 8,000 years old, I can't trust it.
Maybe it's a flaw in their system.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, there's plenty of flaws, right? But now look, when we look at, there's certain indisputable forms of dating, right? Like dendrochronology, right? Which is counting tree rings. You know what the oldest tree is, dendrochronologically dated? Like 5,400 years old. There's not a tree older than that in the whole world. You see what I'm saying? But carbon dating says that the tree is 12,000 years old. But the tree itself says it's 5,000 years old. See what I'm saying? So am I supposed to believe the tree or am I supposed to believe, right? So if there's not a tree older than 5,000 years, old, right? And I believe, according to the Bible, that about 5,000 years ago there was a flood. Then that makes total sense that it would have wiped out the plant life at that time, and it would have had to restart when the waters lowered, right? And it consistently matches up with the scriptures. So I can't believe the earth is older than 12,000 years.
Okay, that's interesting. But my first question, I haven't gotten like a satisfied answer.
Well, we do not believe that a DNA test can substantiate somebody being an Israelite, because DNA, again, does not deal, what we're dealing with is a nation of people, right? DNA does not classify people into nations.
So what you're basically saying is, when God created the nation, He picked people from different groups to make the nation.
He could have, yeah.
So if God picked people from different groups to make the nation, and you're hating on someone else, maybe because they are African, you disagree with them because they are Hamites, is it a possibility that God must have chosen one of their ancestors to be one of the nations?
Well, God, the Hamites were used to create the Israelites. Israelites became a nation in Egypt, right? The people of Egypt were called Mizraim, which is the son of Ham. So the Hamites were used. Then we also mingle with the Canaanites. Then we mingle with the Cushites. What's your question?
I'm not talking about like society-wise. I'm talking about like genetically.
Genetically, meaning. Yes, there is no Israelites without the wombs of Hamites and the wombs of Canaanites, the wombs of Egyptians and the wombs of Canaanites and the wombs of Cushites. Those were used to bring forth the Israelites, certainly, right?
So then why is there supposed to be a division between both groups?
There's a division because atrocities have been acted on the Israelites by these other nations. Give me Psalms 83, right?
Psalm 83:1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
So it's talking about the enemies of God and those that hate God. Who are these people? Read.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people,
These people have a counsel, have a conspiracy against the people of God. Read.
and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation.
There is a conspiracy to exterminate the Israelites. Read.
That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
Read on.
The tabernacles of Edom.
The white man. Read.
The Ishmaelites.
The Arab man. Read.
Of Moab.
The Asians. Read.
And the Hagarenes.
Read on.
Gebal. Ammon. Amalek. The Philistines.
The who?
The Philistines.
Hamites. Egyptians. Read.
With the inhabitants of Tyre.
More Hamites than Canaanites. So as we can see here, that the Hamites have joined up with the Asians, with the Edomites, and they have a conspiracy against the Israelites. So that's where the animosity comes from, a conspiracy against the people of God, right? But just for the record, everybody that's from Africa is not a Hamite, right?
I think that's why the conflict. Personally, for me, to be honest with you, I mean, from me being in Africa,
You're Yoruba, right?
yeah, I'm Yoruba. From me being in
I remember you.
Africa, and mixing with like different groups of people,
Uh-huh.
I really do not believe in the Israelite versus Hamite theory. But my question is, if there's a possibility that there are still a lot of Israelites in Africa, then how do you determine the difference between?
Okay.
Because the reason I'm asking that.
No, I'm with you. I got you. Go ahead.
No, the reason I'm asking that is this. I just saw one of the brothers here, and he called me Hamite. He said I'm from Africa.
Who said that?
One of the brothers.
Who called him a Hamite?
I think that dude right there.
This guy, your padre, called you a Hamite.
And he showed me 8. He showed me 8, and that's.
But you're Yoruba, right?
Yeah, he showed me 8.
See, so here's what we have to understand.
There's
This,
some form of ignorance
I'm with you. Yes, he had a form of ignorance. Don't worry, I'm an educator. Don't you worry, I'm educating everybody right now, right? Who doesn't know? So here's how, because now I see your initial question, which is, how do we find out if there's a remnant of Israelites in Africa? Who are these people, right? So here's how I would say to find out. It's very simple. You have to study the transatlantic slave trade, right? So if I study the transatlantic slave trade and I say, okay, Judah is African American, Benjamin is the West Indian, the Commonwealth and Dutch Caribbean, Levi is Haitian, right? We'll just say that, right? Okay, cool. So what tribes of Africa, because they've led us to believe in the schoolhouse that, you know, they just grab people from all over Africa and they just took them wherever they want. But that's not what happened, right? So we know that specific tribes were taken from specific parts of Africa by specific groups of Europeans and brought to specific parts of the Americas, right? So for example, a lot of Yoruba went to places like Puerto Rico. A lot of Yoruba went to places like Brazil, right? You see what I'm saying? So if I'm saying that the people in Puerto Rico or in Brazil are the Israelites, and the Yoruba have contributed to creating these people, right? Then I can conclude nothing but Yoruba are also Israelites. Same thing with the Igbo and all the tribes, because we know all the tribes of West Africa didn't go into slavery, right? Certain ones did. So that's who I would say are the Israelites, the tribes who evidently went into slavery, right? Go ahead, King.
Okay, another question I want to ask is, I'm looking at the different tribes,
Uh-huh.
and I'm seeing, like, for example, the Levites are Asian,
Uh-huh.
and I also see that the Cubans
Uh-huh.
are Manasseh,
Yes, sir.
and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So the question I'm asking is this: the Asians,
Uh-huh.
they also came from West Africa.
Yes, sir. Certainly.
A lot of them came
Been in Togo, especially. Uh-huh.
And back then, when slavery started,
Uh-huh.
they were not called Asians.
That's true.
So how do you know, how can they be Levites if they were not called Asians when that stuff happened? And
Well,
also different people were-
being called Haitian doesn't make you a Levite. Being a Levite makes you a Levite, and the Levites are predominantly called Haitian today. That's based off of prophecy.
So are you saying, like, pretty much the people that took them into slavery, they made sure that they took just the Levites?
No.
Or at least majority were Levites.
Yeah,
and went to
yeah, but they didn't. The people who took them into slavery didn't necessarily know that. No, but the Levites were gathered together and had a kingdom that's called the kingdom of Dahomey, right? The Awe people predominantly, but not exclusively, predominantly, because that's the predominant place where the slaves that came to Haiti originate, is in the Awe, amongst the Awe people, Benin, Togo, in that area. And that's not totally, but mostly, right? So I'm not saying that the French knew these are the Levites. I'm saying that God predicted ahead of time that the Levites were going to go to Haiti and be taken by the French.
Okay, another question. I see that you have Puerto Ricans as Ephraim,
Mm-hmm.
but you have the Asians as the Levites.
Uh-huh.
So my question is this.
Uh-huh.
When slavery happened, Puerto Ricans did not exist. Puerto Ricans is like a mixture
Of Tainos and West Africans.
Tainos,
Mhm.
West Africans, and also Europeans.
Uh-huh.
So how can, the first question is, how can they be Ephraim
Uh-huh.
if they did not exist back then? That's the first question.
Uh-huh.
And the second question is, why are they not Levite if they are mixed with the Asians as well?
Well, they're not mixed with the Haitians.
Yes, they are.
Who?
The Puerto Ricans.
When did they mix with the Haitians?
During slavery. That's when the Puerto Ricans were created. The
No,
Puerto
but Haitians weren't mixed with Puerto Ricans. We got brought to the island of Saint Domingue, right? And we stayed there. Puerto Ricans are in the island that's called Puerto Rico. So you have indigenous Tainos, right? Then they bring in Yoruba slaves to the island of Puerto Rico, right? And they enslave both populations. See what I'm saying? And in slavery, the populations mingle together. That's why when you go to Puerto Rico, you see people as demonstrated that look all kind of different ways, because the indigenous people and the African slaves and the so-called white man contributed genetically somewhat to that as well, mingle. And the white man contributed genetically to everything because, of course, they had indigenous and black women that they dealt with, et cetera, et cetera. We understand that, as well as their women was dealing with us too, right? So we know all type of different stuff happened. But the people who were brought to that land are all the descendants, or predominantly the descendants of the tribe of Ephraim. That's what we're saying. So we're saying when they brought a Yoruba slave over, that these Yoruba slaves they brought over were tribe of Ephraim. The indigenous Tainos were also the tribe of Ephraim. Then the tribe of Ephraim began to amalgamate. Have you been to Puerto Rico before? I went in December, right? So when you go to Puerto Rico, you see what? People that look like me, you see people that look like you. They all speak Spanish, and they all say what? They're Puerto Rican. They don't look at, oh, well, this dude is this color, this dude, so he's not, no. They all just Puerto Rican. You see what I'm saying? So that is who we saying the tribe of Ephraim is.
Okay. I think you've answered pretty much all my questions.
All praises.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yes, sir.
Or at least you answered all the questions.
Uh-huh.
And I think after everything you've said, there's one takeaway that I've taken away from this. Is that in one way or the other, even though people have wronged each other in the past, the way God created everything, people are mixed within each other.
True.
So what I would like to say is that as a people, we should focus more on that, the stuff that brings us together, more than the stuff that divides us. Especially if you look like me. because you know how it goes. If someone stop you driving on the road, you whoop your car, and the cop stop you, they're not gonna ask if you're Yoruba or you Igbo.
Of course not.
They're not gonna ask if you're Ephraim or you Zebulon.
They just gonna get you.
You're black.
That's true. Yeah, it's true.
So I think we should understand that even though I do not believe in this, but talking from your perspective, even though prophecy has to be fulfilled and all this stuff has to be done, we need to understand that this is also important as well. And as long as you are this, it's one that comes first in the place you're living in.
True.
I don't know
You're
if I'm making any sense. I'm all over the place.
no. I'm with you. Because you're right. Because the system that's created now is based on how everybody looks. So that's how everybody thinks now. You see what I'm saying? That's how the white man is. Everybody thinks you look this way. This is what it is, right? Now, if you go back to Africa, it's going to be different. Now you might be asked, well, what tribe are you from? Well, you see what I'm saying? But as far as America goes, it's black, white. You know, that's how they do it.
It's not just America, but
And all over the world.
black men
Yeah.
all over the world.
All over the world. You're correct, brother.
With that being said, I want to thank you for answering my question.
Yes, sir.
I also want to say this, even though I disagree with y'all.
Yes, sir.
I know that you guys are doing this for the good part.
Yes, sir.
You're trying to make, you see your people suffering and you're trying to bring them up. So even though I completely disagree with the doctrine and all that, I want to appreciate you guys for coming out and trying to help the people.
Yes, sir. All right, bro. What's your name, brother? E. Okay, Emmanuel. Nice to meet you, brother.
All right, man, you too.
All right. All praise to the Most High. We wrap us up.
All right. With that, we're going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Hamashach, Yahweh Shai, and say Shalom.
Shalom.
My nigga Delta in the wax.
Shalom, what's going on? It's your brother, Chief Priest Alazar Lawyer, aka the Gorilla Hebrew, and I'm just letting y'all know I just dropped my official clothing line, Urban Gorilla. Go to urbangorilla.com right now to check us out, man, and pick something up. That's URBNGRLA.com. We got all kind of items for men, women, children, even infants, as well as fragrance oil, smell goods. You can also check out Hebrew Israelite Clothing Co., another SICARRI business, on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, you can hit up DeaconSICARRI.com to get your plug on the scarves, the music, and the children's Bibles. Thanks for your time. All praise to the Most High. Kwam Yasharala. Shalom.